It's here! Wirecast 8 is here, and we're going to be talking about it all on this show, all the new features, all the great things that are coming with it, so stick around. It's going to be an awesome show, and it's glad to be back. I'm glad to be back. Thanks for watching. This is Wirecast Live. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Wirecast Live. I'm your host, Andrew Haley, and I want to say big thanks to Leslie Samuel for filling in these last 2 weeks. He did an amazing job. I hope you guys had a really good time with him. I got to catch some of those episodes, and it looks like they were really good. He shared a ton of awesome information, and I hope that it was really useful. I think it was, fun to have some guest hosts on the show, and hopefully you got some value out of that. And I just want to say thanks. He really did an amazing job, and I feel lucky to have a job after he came in and hosted this show for me. So big thanks to Leslie. Hopefully you'll have him on again at some point. There will be other guest hosts in the future, and there will be times when I won't be able to do the show. So it's really nice to be able to hand it off to the team. And I want to say big thanks to Deborah Lee and to Trevor for running things behind the scenes while I was getting things ready for today, really, or yesterday. So if you didn't hear, we have launched Wirecast 8. This is the latest and greatest version. This is the biggest release that we have ever done for Wirecast. I mean, literally, in just under a year, the engineers and the development team and the quality assurance team, like everybody here at Telestream's really pulled a ton of a ton of new things into this release and have worked extremely hard. And I think it really shows. It may seem like this is not as big as previous releases, but just looking at the release notes, you'll see that there are hundreds and hundreds of tasks and things that they added and changed and fixed. And one of the things that we do here at Telestream is we tend to do releases once every year and a half, 2 years, and we pack a lot into it. Now, that will be changing a little bit. So if you are just getting into Wirecast 8, and this is something that you haven't seen before, but if historically we typically release an update or an upgrade like this, a major version upgrade, and if you already own a license of Wirecast, then you just upgrade for a discounted price, typically about a third of the cost of the software. But starting with Wirecast 8, we want to change that a little bit, and now we can talk more about this in other episodes and stuff like that, and there's more information on the website. But basically, we figured in a way that's kind of like subscribing to the subscription model, but you have to wait a year to a year and a half to get these major new features. So why don't we start to release major features more frequently rather than 5, 10, 12 dozens like this one at one time? Let's release them, more quickly, and then charge a lower fee for the amount of money, and then you can get more versions within that year. And then when you buy a license, that basically entitles you for that one whole year to get all major releases and updates and upgrades, rather than hold everything back and just charge you later. So that's all sort of come around with this Wirecast 8. So hopefully starting with this version of the software, if you upgrade or if you update or you have Wirecast 8, from this point forward, you should start to see more releases on a faster pace. And if you own the license, then it entitles you to any upgrades. Like if we did Wirecast 9, in 2 months, you would get Wirecast 9 for free because you already have a subscription basically with your licensed 8. Now, you always own 8, that's always yours, but for that year period, you get any other additional upgrades, and we don't have to hold back features for another major release. We can release them on a faster pace. So stay tuned for that, but I think that's something you should be aware of. This is going to be a really cool new model going forward, and I think it's going to really help the customers because it's basically, I think, a better, system for them, and also a better system for our developers, because they don't have to pack everything in at once. They can work on a feature at a time and add them in smaller chunks, which helps us to, do a better job, catch more bugs, and fix things before they become issues. Whereas obviously when you release 20 things at once, you suddenly have to fix 20 things at once if there's any issues. So I think it's going to be a win-win for everybody. So stay tuned for that. All right. Enough about Wirecast 8 for the moment. Let's just get into some news, and I also want to say hi to folks tuning in on the channels. Let me pull those up real fast, because I've been a little remiss about pulling up the streams here. So let me jump over to my Facebook Wirecast page, and I'm also going to pull up YouTube here in just a second. I want to give some shout outs to people that have been watching. If you have been catching those episodes recently and you've been tuning in, thank you for watching. If you don't know about this is your first time watching, you can sign up to subscribe to our email list, which is available at www.telestream.net/WirecastLive, and you will get an email in your inbox letting you know when we have a show coming up or if there's guests available. So anyway, I just want to say thanks. So it looks like Jeff Adams, Ian Anderson Gray, I love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for saying hi. Alex McDonald, Dave Sheehan, great to see you guys. Appreciate that. Thanks for tuning in on Facebook. Hopefully you're already playing around with Wirecast 8 and you're liking it. I think it's going, again, we'll get into it today, and there's going to be a lot of fun stuff that I can show you with the features, and hopefully we'll stick around to answer questions at the end, and we'll try to wrap this up by 3:30 today at the latest, because I know we have a time limit these days. All right, so let me pull up YouTube real fast, and I'm going to pull that in. So just to give you guys an idea of what my last few weeks have been like, it's really, if you head over to like telestream.net, or if you even open Wirecast 8, you'll see a lot of new videos. You'll see a lot of new content. The website's been completely redesigned. There's a whole bunch of fixes and changes that we've made with this release. So there was a lot of stuff to get ready. So it really helped to have Leslie step in and be able to take some of the Wirecast Live hosting duties off my plate. So I just want to say thanks again to him and to everybody else. And again, I think this doesn't have to be just a one person show. I think Wirecast Live stands for a lot more than just what I bring to the table, but what this whole community and what live stream is all about. So it's been really fun to see that sort of expand as we do that. So let's talk briefly about upcoming shows, so you kind of know what the next month is going to look like, and then we'll come back. We actually are running another promotion that I want to tell you about too. So we're going to start with upcoming shows. I want to talk about next week. So that's in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, I will be back. But in next week, I will be in Amsterdam at IBC. So if there won't be a show next week, I will try to broadcast from the booth there on our Facebook page and our YouTube page, if I can stream to that as well, depending on bandwidth availability in the booth. And they probably won't be at the same time, but at least I'll try to broadcast on the 14th. So look for that stream, and if I have a chance, I'll try to check in from the IBC show floor. If you don't know what IBC is, it's the International Broadcasting Conference. I think that's what it stands for. It's basically a big show similar to the National Association of Broadcasters in Las Vegas, which happens in April. The sort of international European big show is in Amsterdam every September, and I was there last year, and I'll be there again this year, and we'll be showing off Wirecast 8 as well as a bunch of other cool Telestream stuff there. So you happen to be there, Lutz, I know you came to the last show. It was great to see you there. I think that's where I met you for the first time, and some of our other international viewers. So again, stop by the booth in Amsterdam if you are in the area. It should be really fun. And Ian, let me know if you want to meet up out there. That would be cool. Aaron, thanks for watching Astronomy Live. Welcome to B Studio. You bought it today. Great. All right. I'm glad you're liking Wirecast 8. Jean-Francois, thank you. Welcome, and thank you for watching. All right, so when I get back from IBC on the 21st, we're going to have Jeffrey Powers from Geekazine on the show, and he and I are going to be talking about 7 reasons to upgrade to Wirecast 8. So that's going to be more of a long-term, like, how's Wirecast changed over the past, 3-4 versions. So, Jeffrey obviously has been using Wirecast for a long time. He's seen the history of development. So we want to actually take us way back to, say, version 4, or so, and kind of talk about features that have been added. If you happen to be, you're probably not watching this show if you're on version 4, but there are still some people out there using a really old version like that, version 4, version 5, version 6, and we want to talk a little bit about, the history of the development there. So I think it'll be fun to talk about things that maybe those older version users may not know about, or things that have changed in Wirecast. And we can take some screenshots and look at some old photos and see how the program's changed. I think it'll be a really fun episode, and I'm really pleased to have Jeff on the show for that. So that'll be in 2 weeks on the 21st, so mark your calendars. After that, on the 28th, we have a surprise mystery guest called, and this show is going to be called Streaming Like a Rock Star. So it's going to focus on music, and it's going to focus on sort of the musical entertainment streaming. So stay tuned. We're trying to line up the guests for that, but if we can do that, it should be a really exciting show. You're not going to want to miss that one. And then the week after that, she is a bit of a celebrity these days. Vicky Lashenko, the host of the Mompreneur Show, is becoming a huge inspiration for me. She just launched a Wirecast solo workshop with the live streaming pros. It'll teach you all about how she sets up and runs her one-woman show, and gives you tips and things like that. So you can check that out. We'll be talking about there, and she'll be sharing some of her tips here on the show on how she runs Wirecast as a one-woman show. So don't miss that either. If that's something you need, if you don't have more than one person, or you really need to have complete control, I'm lucky enough here to have Deborah Lee in the back studio and Trevor. And so we're really a 3-person team here. And part of the reason we did it that way was so I could focus on the content, I could focus on you, I could focus on my guests. And that saves me from having to constantly be like clicking and operating things. It's a real challenge to be able to put on a great show, stay engaged, but also, do all the technical things you need to do, throwing on titles, graphics, all that stuff. So that will be a fun show. She's going to share some great tips on that as well. So check out her show at themompreneurshow.com, I think. And if you're curious, you haven't seen any of her stuff, but we'll be very pleased to have Vicky on. All right. That is it for my announcements for upcoming shows. Let's talk about the promotion. If you don't know, we just launched a new promotion going to the end of the year, and this is a pretty great deal. So this is called the Wirecast Gear Up promotion, the Gear Up promotion. This is basically if you have been wanting to upgrade your computer, your workstation, get a computer that you want to run Wirecast on and has all your capture cards and all the software already loaded onto it, we wanted to make that easier for you guys. We think Wirecast Gear is pretty amazing, and some people have been really looking at it, but up till now, there was no way to sort of redeem your copy of Wirecast and get that off the cost. But now you can. If you own any version of Wirecast, I think 4 or later. So if you own 4 Studio Pro, 5 Studio Pro, 6 Studio Pro, 7 Studio Pro, 8 Studio Pro, you can trade that in and get the cost off of the gear unit that you want. So it's a pretty great deal. And of course you get Wirecast 8 and a new license and all the great stuff that comes with that and everything else that comes on the gear. So check that out if you're interested. There's links in the chat, I think. We're going to be sharing those. Yes, we'll be sharing those next week. We'll be sharing those in the chat. And you can also head over to telestream.net/WirecastGear, all one word. telestream.net/WirecastGear if you want more information on that promo. All right. I think that gets us through our updates and upgrades and our news and information. So it might be time to just dive in. And and it might be time to just dive into our features. As I mentioned earlier, there's a brand new, website with a bunch of new videos and stuff like that. So again, if you've been curious what we've been up to the last few months, kind of sort of set the tone here. What have we been doing for this launch? What have I been doing? We have been doing a lot of videos and a lot of content, a lot of sort of thinking about what Wirecast means and what Wirecast is, and how do you introduce new people to that. So in honor of that, I want to share this new video that we cut together with a great team here in California, and I think it turned out pretty well. It's about 2 minutes, and you can find it on the Wirecast overview page. We'll upload it to the YouTube channel soon, but I want you guys to be some of the first people to see this video. It's pretty fun. So why don't we roll this, Deborah Lee, and then we'll come back and we'll get into the new features. My name is Andrew Haley. I'm the Wirecast product evangelist. Wirecast is software that turns your computer into a television studio. You can basically plug in your cameras and be up and running in a couple of minutes.
You don't have to have a $100,000 budget to create live video production. You can make great looking video for a fraction of the cost.
We've seen it used in churches, we've seen it used in schools, we've seen it in stadiums, live events.
What's up, New York City?
Wirecast is such great software, we use it ourselves internally, just like our customers use it.
I do this weekly live show called WirecastLive. We use Wirecast front to back throughout the show to reach out to people to talk about Wirecast and other products that we make at Telestream. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to use Wirecast Rendezvous. It makes it so easy to show what I want to show when I want to show it on camera. Now, this feature is very cool because it allows you to bring in remote guests from anywhere on any smart device as long as they have an LTE or a Wi-Fi connection. And there they are. Hey, guys. We're really excited about Rendezvous because you can send someone a link, and just by clicking on it, they can join your live broadcast. Whether you're just one person with your webcam and a laptop, or you're in a full-fledged live production with multiple cameras and multiple people, Wirecast will scale to meet you where you're at. You can film an entire live production with graphics, titles, multiple cameras, and then walk away, and you have a great looking video at the end. What we're trying to do with Wirecast is give anyone the power to reach anyone else on the planet with video and live streaming.
Hey Melissa, welcome to the show.
Hey Vicky, I'm so excited to be here.
Wirecast makes your story accessible to tell to the rest of the world.
It's a real-time communication tool that's second to none. With it. We hope to be producing more of those, and in this video we kind of had to be our own customer example, but there's obviously some other people like Vicky. You saw her from the Mompreneur show in there, and some of our other examples in there. So it's pretty cool. It turned out really well, and I'm very pleased with it. And again, we want to be making some more videos with other people out there like you guys that are using Wirecast and how it's impacting your lives and your businesses and your hobbies and everything. So I noticed in the comments here, just a few, I see Raymond is talking about some of the features he likes, like the web stream, and Randy, you like the video? Thank you. Appreciate that. Lutz, you're asking if we'll be out at IBC, and I will be out at IBC next week. I think I mentioned that. Hopefully you caught that. And Ian, yeah, we've been busy. It's been a busy few weeks, hoping to make, month actually, hoping to make videos like that and get them out the door. Okay. So without further ado, I think we should dive in and talk about some of the new features. So let's go to my desktop, and we're going to just get as many as we can in before the end of the hour. So here I have a copy of Wirecast 8. If you're on an earlier, version, or if Wirecast 7, or if you were lucky enough to be in one of the early release programs or got a beta version, one of the ways you can tell that it is new is right from the interface, there's a couple subtle changes. Look, first of all, right here on the left, there's the clear layers, and they now have an icon on them with basically a stacked layer and an X on them. We hope that's more clear to people, not to use a pun intended there, but that this is a way to blank out your shots. So that's different. You can kind of tell you're using Wirecast 8 immediately because those icons are a little different there on the clear or blank layers on the left. There's also some new icons for the headphones and that the monitors, audio monitors, so that should kind of tip you off a little bit. You'll also notice up here in the inspector that this, we've dropped the build-in and build-out tabs. So you don't have as much control over where things animated on the screen and your titles and graphics for building in and out transitions. That is now more or less, we've handed that duty off to the new Blue Tyler Live stuff if you really want to be precise on where your titles and graphics come in. But that being said, we overhauled a lot of the transitions. And in fact, the whole render engine in Wirecast 8 is different than it's ever been before and more powerful. We've brought in our the render engine, which to those who don't know what that is, that's just how do objects and elements get sort of interpreted by the computer on screen so you can lay them out, manipulate them. All that has to be rendered by the computer. So if, you were to take an image and squeeze it so it was really small or turn it around, like that all has to be interpreted by the computer and shown in its new form, and that's basically handled by the render engine. Things like transitions, things like sort of compositing and composing shots, that's all handled. How you resize, scale, rotate, all that is the render engine. So one of the things that we did was we pulled that render engine from our award-winning software ScreenFlow on the Mac, pulled it into Wirecast because the ScreenFlow had a much better and newer render engine than Wirecast did. So it's now in Wirecast, and it offers things like a bunch of new transitions that we could add. We overhauled the smooth transition, so it's got the ability to add parameters to it. So if you have smooth, you'll see you've got things like options in the switch menu that you never had before. So you have the channel interpolator, which is sort of the basic smooth transition, which I think that you'll have to check the user manual on that. I'm going to have to read up on exactly what channel interpolator means. I don't want to say I have I could guess right now, but I'm not going to. But that's the default, and that more or less handles the smooth transition the way it was before. But now you have different things like curve types, like how fast does something come on? Does it sort of exponentially smoothly transition on, or does it ease in, ease out? You have things like the spring animation, which is really fun. So let me show you that real fast. So I'm going to add just a media file here. And I'm going to go to my pictures folder. And let's just grab the logo here. All right, so and I'm going to duplicate this just so it's more obvious. Smooth typically works best, normally, again, if you're not familiar with Wirecast, acts like a fade if you're going from one shot to a completely different set of shots or elements. So if the Wirecast logo is there and then it's gone, you'll see on the right here as we fade this in. I'm going to resize here. It looks like my mouse might be a little big for that. So we're going to fade that in, and if we were to fade it off, it would just fade on and off, right? But in this case, if we were to use one of our new render engine abilities and resize it right in the preview window and move it up to the upper right corner, then we fade that on, and it'll fade on just using the smooth transition. But now we want to say, let's go back to what we were. Well, of course, the smooth transition will animate that. The channel interpolator setting will animate that back on, and we'll switch, and it'll just grow and change its position, which is great. That's what the smooth does. But now if you add, say, the spring behavior to this, you'll get a great spring, like realistic physics change here. So pull that up a little bit. And it springs up to the corner, and we springs down, and we can even, I'll make that full screen so you can really see the physics in action here. springs up, springs down, and so forth. So play around with the switch, the smooth transition. It's pretty cool. There's some neat, linear obviously is just going to do a straight grow and shrink, at a constant rate. Ease in, ease out, pretty fun. Let's do that. So it slowly and then speeds up as it goes, right? And then let's play around with, say, Catmull ROM spleen. Again, you're going to need to check the user manual for that. I did not. That looks like more of a slower thing. All right, so that's the new smooth behavior, smooth transitions. Now, there's a ton of other cool, fun transitions that you can play around with. So I highly recommend checking them out. Like the vacuum transition, super fun. Let's pull that off here. It just gets vacuumed off the screen. All right, and vacuumed on, which looks more or less better when you have backgrounds and things like that. But that's a fun transition. There's things like this is one that I saw on Jeffrey Powers' sort of walk through the RGB channels. I didn't even play with this that much, but this is a fun one, which I might need to, hold on, there we go. So you get all three channels, red, green, blue, and they kind of come in at different times. So pretty fun. Okay, so lots of new transitions. I believe there's 23 of them that you can play around with. Check that out. And of course, the other thing we talked about was that you can now, in the preview window, with this new render engine, you can move things around. You'll notice as I move things, actually probably best if I shrink here, you'll notice these green lines. These are the new snapping lines, which again, we've inherited from our ScreenFlow engine. So this helps you with layout. You now know exactly where the dead center is, and it'll stick a little bit as you move an object or an element through the center of the screen. So snapping is there. You also know when you're at the edge of the screen, it'll snap to the edge. When your wireframe is there, snap to the top or the center line. Snap to the bottom, it lets you know there. So very handy when compositing multiple things. At this point, objects will not snap together. I think developers, the development team felt that would be too frustrating. If you had multiple objects on screen, they'd all just be bumping and sticking to each other. So at the moment, it's just going to snap to the center. It's going to snap to the sides and the bottom, just to give you an idea of where those are in relation. So that should give you a much easier time laying things out. Of course, you have proportional scaling if you just click any of the corners on your wireframe. You also get, if you want unproportional or disproportional scaling, so you don't want to respect X and Y dimensions, hold your Shift key, and now you can squeeze, scrunch, shift, and you can change the proportions in just the X dimension, in just the Y dimension, all that. Okay. Command Z quickly does an undo, and I'm back to where it was before. And then one of my favorites is the new crop. So again, I'm going to zoom in really close so you can see this. So I'm holding on my keyboard my control key. And by holding the control modifier key, those little circles of the handles turn into tiny squares. This indicates that you've moved from just a resize to a crop. And now you can quickly crop elements in any dimension. All right, so crop way faster to do all this. In fact, all of this new stuff that we've added with the render engine just makes Wirecast 8 the easiest to use version that we have so far. Now, of course, you still have access to all of your sliders and everything in the, so if you still want to do crop the old-fashioned way and crop left and crop right, you can do that. And you have values associated with that. So if you remember all those values, again, this would be something we can cover in the show in 2 weeks, but old versions of Wirecast never had values. You never knew exactly what, your scale and rotation and size and all that was, but now you have degrees and measurement for all that. And now if you couple that with just this sort of easy to use grab, rescale, and these new wireframes, you've got just the best of both worlds with Wirecast 8. All right, so next is our rotation. So there's a handle for that that you can do, and of course it will snap for you. So you'll know when you're at 90, 180, and so forth, 360, all that stuff's, or 360 there, 270. So easy. All right. And you can always manipulate there. So new ways of working with elements in Wirecast right in the preview frame is very cool. So let's talk about you'll notice a couple new sliders as well in the shot layer properties tab here. So let's talk about these real fast. You have this new reflection slider. This again is a gift of the new render engine. It enables some amazing looking effects, and you can basically do some beautiful looking reflections. You can also add drop shadows. The other side of that is the drop shadow for any element. Now, Wirecast had drop shadows. Wirecast 7 had drop shadows previously, but just for text. So it wasn't any element that you added. Now a drop shadow can be applied even to, and I love this example, I've been using it a little bit. Let's jump in here and add my capture source, my camera. And we will just make sure that's 1920 by 1080, and we will scale to fit, right? So here is my my green screen shot, and I'm going to make that larger so everybody can see that. And let's add a chroma key to that. And I need a background where you can see what's going on behind me. So we're going to add just a solid color, and I will add, it could be blue, it doesn't matter. Let's see, go back here and pick the color. All right, there we go. Okay, so, and then I'm just going to use my disproportional scaling here to just fill up the screen. All right, so I've got this very blue background. We can make that a little lighter blue, or let's take it down just a little bit more to the white. All right, so pretty intense magenta or blue there. Okay, so I've got this blue background that I've just created using the color generator. Well, the cool thing now is that I've also chroma keyed out the green, right? So we've chroma keyed out green on this shot, right? So we're from green to blue. And then in this shot with the new drop shadow, I can enable it, and you'll see now a shadow has popped up behind me. So using the offset, so Wirecast can actually now, with this new drop shadow tool, can real time interpret the drop shadow even on a chroma keyed source. So it's not a static drop shadow. It's a drop shadow that's going to track and interpret and render in real time. So really, really cool, right? I mean, this was not possible before with the old drop shadow tool. So this is more than just a drop shadow that can be used for text. Now, when you add, I'm going to delete this. I'm going to delete all this so my sort of computer can kind of settle down here. But let's actually just take off the chroma key here. And so let's say we add in a text source. Now, we'll just add a title or a text right here. And this will pop open the text source box, and it looks like we're already having a little bit of trouble. I want to slow this down just a tad because I'll be cognizant. And then we'll delete. Let's do delete shot. All right. And then we'll save. Okay, so if you ever want to delete sources permanently out of the sort of the project memory, just resave, and it'll ask you, are you sure? Do you want to delete these sources for good? And I'll say, actually, no. Hold on. I want to add the solid color back in real fast. So I'm going to add the blue back in. Okay. So, all right. Now, I'm just going to delete it so that my camera and the drop shadow is all gone. So just hit save. Actually, save rather than save as. And that's going to say, you sure you want to save this project without those sources? Yes. Okay, they're gone. They're out of the system memory. All right, so let's add just the text now. So we'll add text, and we're going to create this new text file like hello, how are you? And these are generally best used on, you generally with text need drop shadows. So you still had drop shadow capabilities in these earlier versions. And you'll see you can set a shadow there. It's not going to help in this exact situation. I'm going to add there. I'm going to say, hello, how are you? It should render on. Okay. And if we change the background, just full screen that. All right, so you'll see this text really doesn't have a drop shadow applied to it. It's okay because the background's solid, but if the background was mixed or a gradient, and we could do that by choosing gradient here, you'll see that the text looks, the whiter the gradient gets on the background, the harder it is to read there, right? So that is generally on these mixed type of backgrounds, and in camera shots and so forth, you want that drop shadow to pop the text because the contrast behind the text needs to be people need to be able to read it no matter what color or how bright or dark it is behind the text. If you have just one color of text, like we do here, it doesn't work on all different backgrounds. So that's when you need the contrast that a drop shadow can offer you. So the text option tool always had a shadow here, but it was just for text. And so now, if we just change the offset a little bit and we change the radius, you can see I'm now, let's move this in just a hair so you can see there. You can see now that text is much easier to read in the light areas. And that's the benefit of a drop shadow. Without it, the text is harder to read and flatter. With it, it gives it more depth and it pops it off the background much better. So you still have your text capabilities. You don't need to use the drop shadow, but let's use it anyway and just compare. So let's add drop shadow now in the shot layer properties. And you can see there, we have basically similar capabilities. Offset, blur size, opacity. Let's lower the blur set, change the opacity, and maybe change the thickness or the angle. There we go. All right, so similar, pretty much. You can use either one if you like. Personally, if I'm using text, I'd probably stick with the text shadow capabilities because I can get very specific in the radius and the blur and all that. Although you don't get the lighting angle. So you get offset, but I'm not sure if you can pick your angle for that drop shadow. So there's a little bit of a limitation to either or both. So just be aware of that. But that applies just to text sources. Okay, let me take a quick question. We're going to have to do a multiple part series on new features because if I'm going to dive into them like this and really kind of give you some of the features and overviews, and show you how each one works, then we might need to just pick one or two features each show. Before I get into the next feature that I'd like to show you guys, and after this brief tour, let's head over to tell you where the best place to get more information on features is. So the place I would go is to the website, go to the Wirecast page, the newly redesigned Wirecast page, and right down here under what's new in Wirecast 8, you can also click on the, I believe you can click on this banner at the top. It's going to take you to the press release at the moment. But this will eventually take you right down here to the new features. What's new in Wirecast 8, and this will give you a great overview of some of the cool new stuff. Now, we'll be making videos. I'll be making more videos on each of these features. I have not made a video on this yet. I've not made a video on that. This one with Wirecast Rendezvous, there is a video that's been shot. I think it's being edited right now, so that'll give you some more information on Wirecast Rendezvous. But I'm actually going to go in Rendezvous now, so hopefully that'll give you a moment. And then if I can, it'll be a little tight, but by the end of the show today, I'd like to also see if I can, I don't know, it's going to be tight. We'll see. I think we'll just get into Rendezvous today, and we'll come back and do other features here, like the new multi-track and Facebook comments. I think these two are probably ones that most people have been most curious about. So I'll see what we can do real fast with that. But this is a great place for you guys to get information on each of these. It kind of goes over some of the best stuff. Clocks and timers is an easy one to show if you're curious. That's just under clock. You're just going to add clock as a source. It's going to use the text widget to generate it, so you still have the same controls basically with the text and font and color and all that. But now you also have added controls here at the top, like format, date and time. You can choose whether it's a countdown timer or whether it's a stopwatch, right? So let's start with our, and then you have start and stop buttons, but let's start with just our countdown and add it right there. And I'm going to make it large so we can see it. Now, in the properties, again, the clock properties tab here, you can start the clock or stop the clock or reset the clock, okay? You can also swap it over to a stopwatch. So start at 00, you can choose where you want to start and whether it has hours, minutes, seconds. Start it and it should start counting up and so forth. You can even, if you want to get really crazy, do fractional seconds and then reset. And now you've got a great timer here that's going to show you, and we can stop right on 6.1 seconds. Okay, so clocks are amazing and a great new feature built right into Wirecast 8 that you have available. All right, let me check your comments for a second before we head on to Rendezvous, which I want to cover. Ian, no worries. We'll catch you next time at IBC if you have a chance. You like this clock? It's really great. It is really amazing. Thanks for saying so, Raymond. And yeah, Randy also digs the clock feature. I'm glad that you really want to know about the audio features. So, all right, since you requested, let's do a little bit of audio, and then if we have time, we'll show Rendezvous. So let's talk about the new audio features. So Wirecast 8 enables you to ingest up to 16 channels of audio per source. So depending on the type of source you have, it may or may not have 16 channels of audio embedded. SDI, which is the professional cabling for professional cameras, can embed up to 16 channels of audio in addition to the video. HDMI, which most cameras and TVs can do up to 8 channels. And that's really I think that spec was designed for consumer surround sound systems like 7.1 surround sound. That's 7 plus the 0.1, which is the bass. So the subwoofer is 8 channels. So that was really what HDMI can handle at this point. And then audio interfaces like USB audio interfaces, mixers, USB mixers, and so forth have varying channel amounts from there. And without getting too much into the weeds, it really depends on the source that you're capturing and whether it's a mixer with 16, 32, so forth, coming in through USB, or it's a capture card. Now, in this computer, I actually have one of the Magewell USB dongles as my capture source. So you'll see here that this guy is the XI100 Magewell USB HDMI dongle. Now, it has an audio source, so I'm just going to bring that in, and let's go over to the properties. If you click on the audio properties, you'll see how many channels this has. Now, this is an HDMI source, so theoretically, it should have up to 8 channels. But the problem is that even though the HDMI signal coming into the capture card might have 8 channels, the capture card is it's driverless. It runs on the UVC drivers, and it's a UVC card. And I think at this point, it only allows 2 channels. So even if it was 8 on the original HDMI source coming into the card is only then passing through 2 channels. So just because your source is HDMI, you may not have access to all the channels. It really depends on what's plugged into your computer. Now, other Magewell cards with drivers and SDI may do 16 channels, but this USB model currently only shows up as 2 channels at the moment. Now, compare that to our Tascam. We have a Tascam 16 by 8 audio interface right here, and that's plugged in by USB into the computer. And let's click on the properties for that guy up here in the tab. And if we click on that, you'll see, boom, it has the first 2 channels, which by default, most sources, and Wirecast 7 and earlier saw the 2 channels per source. That's the primary 2 channels. That's the default for most devices. But if it has more channels available, then just click the more channels. You see by comparison, we didn't have that option. That more channels option is not available for the HDMI dongle, but it is available for this USB Tascam audio interface. And there I can see any channels that are currently broadcasting audio. So I've got audio on multiple channels. You can't see all of it. Let's up the gain a little bit on this guy. Let's just up it. There you go. Okay, so I've got 7 and 8. I've got 9, and I think I'm also firing on channel 1 there as well. So multiple audio interfaces, and then looks like 5 as well. So this is where you'll see all the different microphones that you have plugged in coming in, and you can basically choose whether you want them to be active on this source. So we could say we want this to be on the right channel. So my channel 9 is just an MP3 player that's going on right now, and I can choose to put that active by clicking the left and right and assigning it to be in this source. And so you also have the ability to duplicate this shot. So let's say we duplicate it, and we have the same audio source coming in 2 different shots. But let's say we want to assign this shot to, say, our clock, and this shot to, say, our logo. And let's just pretend those are different speakers, or we have different microphones that we want to assign to that. Well, under each one, for, say, our first guy, we want channel 9 firing, right? But in this one, for our clock, we don't want channel 9 firing. So this one, we would turn it off, and we would make that unavailable. So now we click back, and we'll see that even though it's the same audio source, I've now mapped the channels, or I've mapped the channels, the audio input channels, to the different sources, but it's all from the same interface. So you can create as many. Now, if you want to have a specific map and apply to all, if you click this button, then it's going to change here. So let's just make it a little crazy here. Let's turn on 11 and 6 and 5 and just the right channel for 3. Okay, so we've turned on a ton of these different audio input sources from this one, or our channels from this one source. We click back over to our other shot version of this source, and you'll see none of that's turned on, right? So this allows you to spin up multiple variations and use a great mixer with tons of sources for a ton of different purposes within Wirecast, unless you click the apply all, and that will now apply it to any other shots. So now you'll see they both have the same mappings. And if I change my mind and I turn that off, we're back and we're customizing it. So 11's off on this version, but it's on that version. So very, very useful. Now, couple this with your output. So let's say you want to stream one mix to one set of microphones or audio sources to one destination, and you want to record or send another set of audio sources to another destination, you can choose the map channel for the outputs. And this is where, if you are a Wirecast Pro user, you can select up to 8 different outputs, tracks, we call them. Which are basically mixes or audio buses. So Wirecast Pro 8 now has 8 audio buses. If you have Studio, you don't have access to this, so you'll need to update or upgrade to Pro if you want this feature. But now we give you basically full reign. Whatever your audio sources, it'll show you a list of everything on the left here that you have available, whether it's the XI100 or my 16-channel mixer or audio interface here, and then just choose which ones. Eventually, we've even talked about being able to custom name these, or we'll see. There'll be other additions and updates and stuff to this sort of feature, but for now, just pick where you want different sources. So if this is my microphone, then and I want it on track 1, but I don't want any of the others, then I would say track 1 is just my microphone, just a clean recording of my mic, right? So come in and unselect everything but that for track 1. Now, channel 1, track 1. Now, my channel 9 down here, I want that on track 2. And my XI, I don't want on any. I probably want that, say, on track 8. Does That's just my XI. So you just pick which sources or channels you want going to which outputs. And then here, say on 5, I want source number, I think it's 4 or 5, or 7 and 8 looks like. So 7 and 8, you could make those 7 and 8 if you want. You could make them, assign them to any track you want. So I'm going to say, those will both be assigned to track 3 or 4. And I'm also going to throw in 1 on both of those. So that might be my music plus my microphone. All right. So you get the idea. I've now mapped track 1, track 2, track 3, track 4. So I have 4 tracks. I've even mapped track 8 here if I wanted. I'm not going to necessarily use those. So let's go back and make those track 5. I've got 5 different tracks or buses and mixes going on. And let's say we also want to maybe throw, our channel 9 source on with our XI. All right. Now you've mapped it all. And we've basically assigned the audios to go to the right buses. And now in your output settings, or if you were to stream and set up an RTMP stream, you would choose right here after you choose your encoding. Say you want to stream to Facebook or YouTube at 720 by 1280 by 720. What audio track are you planning on using? And remember, we mapped all 5. And if it's just my microphone, or I think it was my microphone plus my audio, maybe that was track 4. So I want track 4 to go out to YouTube, right? And then locally, I want to record. Now, one of the things about RTMP, this is true for Facebook, YouTube, anything you're streaming RTMP to. Let's just jump into YouTube real fast. Is that the RTMP spec only has room for a single stereo or mono track. So you cannot do multi-track streaming. You can't have, French, English, and people can switch their audio tracks with a single stream. That's just not part of the RTMP spec at this point. So you're limited to picking 1 track at a time per a stream if you're doing RTMP. This limitation is not true for recording in either MP4 or MOV. So if you record an MP4 file, you can record, I believe, up to 8. So an MP4 file can contain all 5 or even up to 8 if you wanted, although there's nothing on those tracks that we mapped, all 5 tracks. And then in that file on your hard drive, you'll have access to every single one. So in theory, if you wanted to master, or if you were, again, this is true also for MOV, you have access to all of them. If you wanted to record a separate source for every single track, then you would have that. All right. So you have a lot of capabilities now with this mapping tool, with the multi-channel ingest. It's all very powerful stuff. So hopefully this will really get you. And one of the things we thought of this was that you can now, if you're an international stream or you want to stream an interpreting or someone's doing sign language, well, I guess sign language wouldn't be applicable here, but if someone's doing a different language or an interpretation of your audio or translation, you could bring that in on a different microphone and assign it to a different track and have a different language version both in your master file as well as you could set 2 streams, one with English, one with Spanish, to 2 different YouTube channels or 2 different Facebook pages and so forth. All right. Any word on being able to include Instagram Live as RTMP? Asked Natalie. Natalie, I have not had any word on that. So I don't know if Instagram, where they are at with planning to open up RTMP streaming to third-party streams at this point. So it'll be a good question. I don't know yet. Asking from, let's check the Facebook comments. All right. Looks like, I don't see any, I might need to refresh on Facebook here. Okay, so we're getting close to our time here. So I don't really have time to do an in-depth Rendezvous tutorial like I had kind of planned. Went with the audience requests here. So let's, real quick, I'll show you briefly how to get started with Rendezvous. We'll come back and maybe in a future episode or learning session, we'll dive in more with Rendezvous. But I want to at least give you the basics. The basics are this. First, Rendezvous is available as just a source. So in order to begin a Rendezvous session, you will need to just add it as a source, and you can go to create Rendezvous session. All right. Now, to create a session, you need to send this link. I mean, you could do Rendezvous by yourself, but if that's fine. But then you never need to send this link to anybody. But this is the link you need to send to people to invite them to your stream. So when you open Rendezvous, that'll now create a new session, open the Rendezvous dashboard, and this is where you will select the audio and video that you want your guests to see. At this time, they cannot see the Wirecast program mix, so they won't see the whole shebang. They'll just see one camera or audio or video source that you've plugged in. This could be your webcam, it could be your main camera, it could be any of your audio sources, right? That's what they'll see when you call them. And then you're going to share this link with them. And that's really the way to do it. You just need to copy and paste the link, which is easy to do, which I've already done just by clicking when I started the session. And then you can jump into like a shared document or your email or a chat or any of that and just paste the link. Okay? Paste it in there and you're good. And then when they click that link, they will be invited to enter their name and add a camera and an audio source. So this is the easiest way to do that. And at this time, we recommend using it with the Firefox, which I'm going to get out of the yellow, do black. So use Firefox or Chrome. That is because this technology is based off of web. Oh man, got a delay here. WebRTC. So WebRTC is a peer-to-peer video, almost real-time video protocol and technology that is already built into Firefox or Chrome. So your guests should be using one of those two browsers. If they want, they can also now share their screen with you if they want. They can share a camera and a video, and they will show up right within the session. And then you will see them, and down here at the corner, every time they ask, you'll be notified that someone would like to join. You can say yes and click on them and add them. You can also kick them out. In Wirecast Studio, you can add up to 2 of these guests. In Wirecast Pro, with your bandwidth and everybody, you should be able to add up to 7 guests. We recommend at least 4 megabits per second of download and upload just for the Rendezvous feature. That's outside of your normal streaming bandwidth that you might need as well. So if you're planning to stream to Facebook with this and bring on a guest, you're going to want in the neighborhood of 8 to 10 megabits per second, both up and down. Okay, so I will dive more into this feature in the next episode. Well, we'll be talking about, we'll be fasted episode. I will dive more into this in a learning session probably. That's probably our best option for this. And then in future episodes, we'll pick new features to get into. And I think we'll save that for more learning sessions. So for now, just know Wirecast 8 is out. It's available. You can find out more information about the features at our website. There are also resources available for you on the website at the resources section. There's also a bunch in the app. So just when you download it and launch it for the first time, you should see resources that you can click on and get you started, as well as tutorials and all the rest of it. So that's it, guys. We barely scratched the surface of 8. I kind of expected not to get through everything, but I hope this was helpful. We covered multi-channel audio. We covered clocks and timers. We covered the new user interface. We covered reflections. We covered how the new render engine and drops, like handles and drop shadows and the rest of it. So we definitely got in there, even covered some transitions and so forth. So this was a great introduction for you guys. You can download Wirecast 8 now. Try it out for free if you're curious. And I'll be back in 2 weeks with more great information about Wirecast and Wirecast 8. And I'm excited to have Jeffrey on the show. I'd like to thank our sponsors for the show, our partners and sponsors. They are critical to making the show happen. All right, well, that's it, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I will be back in 2 weeks, and look for some spontaneous broadcasts either from IBC when we're out in Amsterdam next week. I will try to broadcast from the booth if I can, and we will also have some learning sessions. Maybe I can squeeze one in even before I leave, either tomorrow or Monday. So thanks again for tuning in. This has been another episode of Wirecast Live. It's good to be back, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.